What's going on, everyone? Brad here. Welcome to Crash Shop. In this video, I'm going to go through the process that I take to forge Damascus steel. Damascus steel can be 100 different things. You can get, really crazy mosaic patterns. You can do canister Damascus. But in this video, I'm gonna be doing some very basic, bare bones Damascus. All right, so for this billet, I'm gonna be using a mixture of 15N20 and 1084. Now, 15N20 has a 2% nickel content. And this is important to have in Damascus steel because the nickel is going to etch a lot differently than the other steels in the billet. And when you look at a finished piece of Damascus or a knife that's been etched, you'll see different colors, different streaks, and the shinier parts are because of nickel. And you've seen me use 1084 in the shop plenty of times, not as often as 1095 maybe. The steels are pretty similar. The main difference is 1084 has a higher manganese content. It's also a lot more forgiving in the heat treat than 1095. So 1095 has to be quenched a lot faster, I've noticed, than 1084 in order to gain full hardness. Alright, so I've got 7 pieces here of 1084 and 6 pieces of 15N20. I'll be alternating the pattern here. Now, this is not going to be a super high layer count. I actually really enjoy the look of a lower layer count. This is just to demonstrate the techniques that I use and to show you guys what I do to forge Damascus steel. Now, it's important that you start with clean steel. My 15N20 is coated, so I'm gonna go ahead and take that coating off. And I've got a little bit of surface rust and stuff on here. I'm just gonna clean up at the sander. Alright, so one thing that I like to do is to clean these pieces off with a little bit of acetone. This just helps to make sure they are degreased and that they don't have any dirt or any, whatever just kind of hanging out in the steel that's gonna cause a bad forge weld. Some people use kerosene. I've used it. It works the same. I'm sure there's a million other things you can use, but just gonna wipe these down, make sure they're nice and clean, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put them in my vise and get them welded up. I'm running out of acetone here. I just like to use this drill press vise. It's really easy just to do this all on the tabletop here. So I'm going to be alternating these layers. Now, this is a super simple step, but when it comes down to the etching, if you mess up the placement on this stuff, it's gonna totally ruin your day. They don't all have to be the same width. They don't have to be perfect, but as long as they're close, that'll be fine. And that looks pretty good to me right there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get this welded up. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Some people just wrap it in wire. Some people don't weld it at all. I like to throw just a couple beads on either side here. Just kind of helps keep it together when it's in the forge. All right, so I got that billet all welded up. I'm just gonna be using this one has something, just a piece of rebar here, and I'm gonna stick that on there. That way I've got a handle. And there we go. There is the billet all welded up and ready to be put in the forge and forge welded. So we've got 13 layers here. This will be squashed and drawn out and then flipped to create 26 layers. All right, so helpful hint number 1 is to use steel, use a steel width that fits the width of the hammer you're using to set it. So if your billet is this wide and your hammer is only this wide, you're gonna be kind of, you know, going back and forth and kind of a zigzag in order to set that whole billet. And you may end up with an inconsistent pattern. You may end up with voids that actually don't forge weld at all. And that's the number one thing that I was struggling with when I first started doing Damascus. Now, if you're dead set on using thicker steel or whatever, one thing that I use to kind of help that is I would use a flatter. So this is just like a flattening tool. It's also got a little bit of a fuller on one side. I use this in my hydraulic press. I also use it to flatten steel that's been beaten up too much. But it's really nice for setting billets because you can set a much larger portion than the width of your hammer. So with a few solid hits, I could set this whole billet rather than zigzagging back and forth in order to get the whole face. So the flattening tool, or the flatter, is a pretty helpful tool if you're trying to set billets that are a lot larger than your hammer. Obviously, you can also get a bigger hammer. All right, so here's the billet, and we are going into the forge. If you've seen a lot of blacksmithing videos, you've seen people use this stuff. This is flux. In my case, I'm using household borax. So what this stuff does is it helps keep the steel clean. It melts down into a liquid and it helps prevent any scale from building up on the steel. And that scale can be a huge problem with Damascus, create inconsistencies, pockets, anything like that. This just helps prevent that. You don't have to apply it to your entire billet. This is really just to go into the edges or the seams where the layers meet. All right, so we got our piece of steel here. We've got kind of a red-orange color, and what I'm going to do is apply that to the faces where these layers are seated. This is on a little bit heavy. But you can see that this is kind of melting down into a liquid. All right, so we got the billet all fluxed up. I'm gonna go ahead and let this thing heat up, bring it up to forge welding temperatures, and then I'm gonna take it right over to the hydraulic press to set the weld. Now I only flux it one time before I move over to the press. If you're concerned about if you fluxed it well the first time or not, you're probably fine. I've done forge welding without even using flux in the past, and to be honest, I rarely have any issues, but it is just kind of a fail-safe to make sure that that scale doesn't cause any issues. So you want to make sure that you're hitting forge welding temperatures, which are about 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to give you a nice bright yellow glow. If you exceed that temperature, you're going to see your steel start to spark or like spit, and that is a sign that it's melting. So you don't want to hit that point. It's really easy when you're using a propane forge or any gas forge in general because your heat is always going to be very consistent. It's not like a coke forge or a coal forge where you've got hot spots and cold spots. You're able to keep a real consistent billet temperature in a good, well-insulated gas forge. So once you get the hang of it, it's just going to be the same thing over and over and over again. So we just compressed this billet. We only really pressed it down about 1/8 of an inch just to kind of make sure that that billet is set. So what I'm doing right now is I'm getting the scale off of here. And now I'm going to go ahead and flux this one more time just to be safe. That way if there's any little areas that didn't compress and may have like some scale or oxidation, I can go through this again without having any issues. Right back into the forge. All right, we're gonna press this one more time. good way to tell if your forge weld is stuck is to watch it cool. So if you can see the layers cooling inconsistently, you know that they are not stuck together. But this is one homogeneous piece now. You can see that it's losing its color altogether, and that's a real good sign. That means that we have a good forge weld. I'm gonna hit it 1 or 2 more times just to make sure it's all nice and flat and even before I flip it and start hitting from the other side. Okay, so before I take this over to the press and I squash it from the side, I want to start kind of rounding these corners just a little bit at the anvil. That way I don't get any hole shuts, which is steel folding over onto itself. So I like to use the shelf on the anvil to keep the steel in place, and I'm just gonna go ahead and work the edges of all 4 sides. You can see I'm just kind of beveling the edge of the steel here. You can see this is getting nice and square. Now if you're using a hydraulic press to attack the side of the billet like this, make sure you have a light foot because it's really easy to overdo it. I've definitely destroyed my handful of billets in the past. And now what I'm gonna do using the angle grinder is I'm gonna cut down on the face of this billet, and I'm gonna cut down until there's just a hair of material holding this together. That way I don't have to weld that side, I'll just flip it over and then take it over to the forge. Just to be safe, I'm gonna go ahead and clean this side that's gonna be flipped over on itself on the grinder, just to make sure there's no big pits. It looks like I got it pretty flat, but I like to just be extra safe when I'm doing billets like this. All right, so we got the back pretty clean. It's nice and flat. Just went ahead and hit it on the grinder just to be safe, and we went ahead and cut most of the way through here. I'm gonna go ahead and just heat this up at the forge. We'll flip it over on itself, flux the inside, and then weld it again. Right back into the forge now. This surface is going to be folded over onto itself, so we want to make sure that we don't have scale buildup or any oxidation that's going to cause any issues in the Damascus. I'm going to go ahead and actually bend this over onto itself right now. this up and actually flex the inside one more time. Make sure this is nice and closed. We'll go ahead and flex the side. All right, so we got it folded over onto itself. We got it flexed, the inside is nice and clean. Now we are waiting for this to reach forge welding temperatures where we will take it back over to the hydraulic press and set the welds just like before. All right, the billet's about ready. I'm just gonna ever so slightly set all those welds to make sure it's nice and tight, and then I'm gonna flex it again just to make sure, and then we're gonna go ahead and actually compress this and start redrawing out this billet again. All right, so we just really lightly hit this billet just to make sure that these two edges seated together nicely. And now that it's looking more like one piece, it's gonna be a lot easier to start drawing this out at the press. Just gonna go ahead and clean off all of this scale on the outside. And I'm gonna flex this once more. And I'm gonna go ahead and treat this as if it's the original billet. Well, there we go. We've got 26 layers of steel all welded up to make one homogeneous billet. What's next in the process now is to start drawing this out to the desired thickness, squaring it up, and forging whatever is to be forged out of it. I'll be using this flatter from before to help draw this out because it's got a bit of a fuller on one side. Well, I've drawn this out about 16, 18 inches, somewhere in there, and still over a 1/4 inch thick down this whole bar. So I've got a little ways to go still. All right, so I have cut off the last little bit of this Damascus billet, and I have started to polish the end, and I'm just gonna take this up to a higher grit. I'll etch this, that way you guys can see the pattern. And that should be plenty polished to show a pattern. A lot of times when I'm etching Damascus, I'll bring it up closer to 1500. Right now I'm just at 400, but this is just a quick little etch to reveal the layers. All right, I am using about a 50-50 ferric chloride distilled water solution. I'm gonna use some acetone just to make sure that this piece is nice and grease-free before I etch it. And there we have it. There's the Damascus all polished up and etched. And you can see all 26 layers there. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. Forging Damascus has been an incredible experience, and it seems like every single time I do it, I pick up a new skill. I've learned just about everything that I know through other smiths and through YouTube videos, and it is so great to have a community like this where we can just dump all the info that we've picked up and help to make, you know, everyone else collectively better. Let me know what you guys thought about this video. A lot of my videos have been more start to finish project videos and not so much tip and trick videos. But you know, I want to give you guys an inside look at the process that goes into making knives and everything that I make on this channel, because I know that a lot of you guys are out there making the same things that I am, and probably doing it better than me. But you know, this is a place for me to share the knowledge that I have and for me to learn from you guys as well. I would love to hear any tips and tricks that you guys have. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.